Hi, I'm David Ware with the Arkansas State Archives, and today we're talking a little bit about scrapbooks. Scrapbooks arose as a common way for people to record things, save memories. Scrapbooks took off in the early 19th century with the easy availability of paper, the common occurrence of newspapers, lithographs, and things that people could paste into books. These are family memories, these are chronicles of great events happening around people and so forth. They're an interesting mixture. A scrapbook really shows what was in someone's mind, what they thought was important, that something they should save for their children or their children's children. Scrapbooks pose particular conservation problems. Generally, things on paper of varying quality are pasted, often with glue or paste that will deteriorate or even possibly harm the thing it's being glued to, into a book. Pieces of paper, sometimes of good quality, sometimes not. The paper within the scrapbook deteriorates at differing rates. There are often photographs in there, pieces of advertising and so forth. Things that each would require, in a perfect world, separate conservation treatments. But what you try to do is store these, clean them, and store them in a way that they will last as long as possible. And they provide a great insight into what people thought was important at the time and what they thought would be important for those who came after them.
This is one of the Crip scrapbooks that was made in our conservation lab here at the Arkansas State Archives. This is a custom clamshell box made by one of our conservators. It was made by Jane Thompson, who was one of our conservators several years ago that's retired now, but our conservators continue to make these type of boxes. This was made with board that was then covered with book cloth that was glued on with PVA glue, which is something that is used in conservation that is not acidic. And then there's also within it acid-free paper that's used. So each of these pieces here is custom measured and cut and then glued together to form this box. This ensures that the preservation of these scrapbooks, so that they don't shift and change over time. If they were in a larger box, they could move around, causing damage to them. The amount of layers that are used of board depends on the heaviness of the box, how large it is. If there was a larger scrapbook being made, then that would require additional layers of board to be glued together to form the scrapbook. When it's opened, then we can use coming in on the side to gently pull it out and remove the scrapbook from the box, or we can also use the scrapbook box itself to help in aiding looking at the material. You can see here that the paper that this was made on was very acidic, and therefore it does not preserve as well over time, that it yellows. You can also see where there was glue being used, the outline of where something was previously. Only a little small section is remaining there. Sometimes when we do have the pieces that are missing, we will put them back in the scrapbook using methyl cellulose or wheat paste, something that's more reversible than what was originally used. We sometimes also use corners just to attach it in the corner areas. As you can see, some of the items in here have moved and are no longer in the original location. When we're dealing with scrapbooks, sometimes we'll end up removing some of these items and put them in a separate folder and making indication of where they're at. The Crip Hall scrapbooks document the development of the state capitol and the surrounding area. Here you can see a photograph of the Arkansas State Capitol prior to the construction of many of the buildings to the west of it, including the building that the Arkansas State Archives is in at One Capitol Mall. There's no real development yet behind the Capitol. There's also articles talking about the proposed state capitol grounds development, including several of the buildings that we now see on the Capitol Mall.
Here at the State Archives, we have scrapbooks from the rich and famous, the obscure, and the very prominent, including a number of Arkansas politicians. We have dozens of scrapbooks from Governor Charles Hillman Bruff, almost compulsively self-documenting public figure. We have scrapbooks from Sid McMath, and we have a number of scrapbooks, perhaps this is one of my favorite collections, from former Secretary of State C.G. Hall, who held office from 1937 until 1961. C.G. Hall was better known by his nickname Crip, which he'd acquired. He'd had polio as a young man, and he had some mobility impairment throughout his life. He was famous as a manager of the Arkansas Razorbacks football team. He couldn't play football, but he was the #1 cheerleader, spirit man for the squad. There's still an award that honors him today. In 1936, he ran for the office of Secretary of State, promising to the people of Arkansas that he would make the Capitol look good after years of kind of deferred maintenance. And he started documenting himself. We have scrapbook after scrapbook of clippings, photographs. He did this partially because he wanted to keep track of what he was doing. Also, he dedicated these scrapbooks to his daughter, Nancy. Anything happened in the Capitol between 1937 and 1961, this was where I could find the documentation. People ask sometimes, why do we save these scrapbooks? Because it's all made up of stuff that were clipped from newspapers or magazines and so forth that are preserved everywhere. Why save them if they've been cut up and if they're falling apart and so forth? The answer is, put together in this way, these aren't just clippings. These are expressions of intellectual activity. These are reflections of what people, in this case a very powerful and influential man, Crip Hall, had on his mind. They help us to understand what he was thinking of, what he considered important. This is history. It's not just documentation, but it's the history that emerges from understanding documentation and seeing it put together as he saw it. And so these scrapbooks and the others that we have constitute real gems of our collection. The Arkansas State Archives collection, 200 years of Arkansas history or more, it's all here for you to explore.